There we go. Okay. Well, welcome everyone. Tonight we have a very special guest, Gary Wimmer, from Texas. We'll get into his story as we go along. I listened to him some time ago and found his story very interesting. I ended up buying his book. Is that actually backwards?
No, that's right.
It's the right way? Okay, good. Because sometimes it, depending on
That's
how you have your camera. Anyways, Gary, welcome to the show. And thank you for coming on short notice. We sometimes have problems where somebody has to pull or something has to happen where it's not going to work. And obviously the universe brought you for tonight. So for some of the people that don't know who you are, we sent out some information on you prior to this meeting. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're from, and maybe let's just start with that.
Well, first I would like to say I can't believe you had a problem because this universe offers no problems ever, does it really? Well, as a matter of fact, we're going through a lot of change right now, a lot of issues. So everybody just buckle your seatbelt because it's not in vain. The whole planet is being shown the holes in the boat, the flaws in ourselves, our systems, so we can fix them. So
Great.
it's actually a very blessed time, a very enlightening time. I got interested in psychic ability in college. I was a Catholic. I was an altar boy. Used to know the whole mass in Latin. Went through puberty, went, bye Catholic Church, but never left God or Jesus. Just realized that the church was like every organized religion has certain principles. They're not bad, but they're just incomplete, so to speak. So in college, I started studying psychic ability, and I moved to Austin in 1970, and an astrologer did a reading for me, actually the second in college, and one when I moved to Austin in 1970. And they said, "Do you have a lot of natural psychic ability and interest?" And I'd never thought about that much, but I started giving readings, started reading a lot about it, got fascinated, especially in college, reading Edgar Cayce, 68, 69, during all the turmoil and conflict. Hold on. Hope you're still there. My mouse fell over and closed the screen.
Yeah, we're still here.
Okay, good. Sorry. But Edgar Cayce in particular really fascinated me because it explained God, higher consciousness, life, reincarnation, why we are what we are in such clarity that I profoundly went, wow, this is the truth. In 1972 or so, I started giving readings with mostly with a regular deck of playing cards. Learned my own system. Why not? And in 1977, I traveled a lot with bands. In 1977, I quit a band. I needed to get off the road for a while and moved back into a duplex where I'd been staying, but where I supposedly lived, but hadn't even been there much. I'm just moved in a couple months ago and was gone the next day. So I barely knew my roommates, really, kind of. So anyway, that evening after I brought my gear in and everything, I started feeling real strange. I started sensing what people were going to say before they'd say it. It kind of freaked me out. Tried to go to bed that night, couldn't sleep. I kept feeling all these premonitions of things, strange things. Got up in the morning, my roommate's walking through the room reading the newspaper, and I could see the headlines through his eyes. Boy, he threw the paper down on the table. I just glared at it like, wow, this started happening. This is the first day. I started picking up stuff. I'd go walk to the store. Complete random strangers would walk by, and just like I hear this, I could hear their thoughts when they passed by. I couldn't prove it, but it was too profound, and it started freaking me out. You know, that night, my roommate and I went to a bar. The music was too loud out front. I went and sat in the quieter section with the pool tables, and I thought about taking a break outside to get some air. And all of a sudden, I'm outside in a spot that about 30 minutes earlier I'd felt a premonition about. And I saw these people walk right through me. I opened my eyes. Nope, I'm still in the bar stool. But the door opened and they came walking through, and I could tell what they looked like. And it amazed me. I did this a time or two for my roommate, blew his mind, blew my mind. And this has kept building up, this intuitive power. Every time it was a little different experience than the one before, or a repeat, but a little clearer. I've seen clocks go to a time that someone would call or where I would arrive somewhere. I was seeing signs of everything. And there was no neutral. I could either pick up this energy and absorb it, or I could think like a random stranger 3 blocks away. I would think, scratch your head and point up to the sun, and they would do it. And I'd think, man, if I made that happen, God forbid, what if I thought car wreck? But if I was intuitive about it and picked it up before, that's tolerable. But I couldn't tell the difference between between creator and witness. And this line got thinner and thinner. I'll give you another example of my roommate and I went out to lunch one day, and he's real concerned. It's hard for me to explain this. It's happening so fast. So he's asking me, so are you doing okay now? Because my roommates are real concerned. One of them, the other one wants me out of the house. I'm driving you crazy. But we're having a dinner, and my roommate asked me, what's this like now? And I said, I'll just show you. And I saw 2 ladies sitting in the far corner of the restaurant. Said, do you know either of these ladies? He kind of looked over and said, no. I said, well, I'm going to have the brunette write me a letter. What? I said, I'm harmless. Just going to have the brunette write me a letter. You want me to show you what's going on? I'll watch. And so as we ate dinner, he was just eating and talking. I kept thinking about that brunette. Come over to me, the guy in the blue shirt, write me a letter, harmless. So about 10 minutes later, they're leaving. The blonde walked by, and then the brunette walked by, and she threw a napkin down on my table. And in big letters, she had written, why are you doing this to me? That freaked me out. I started realizing there's no neutral. I'm affecting things or being affected by them to a level I never even noticed or felt or believed or understood. So this psychic tightrope got me really asking questions. And I felt these they called themselves the monitors. I felt some guardian angels, some higher minds, some watching over me, and they seemed to name themselves the monitors, or I suggested that name because I felt them monitoring me. Now I couldn't see them, but I could feel them, and they would appear in duos, 3 at a time, 4 in and out, sort of just checking on me, and that gave me some assurance, some confidence that everything was okay, uh, and that helped. But on about the 6th or 7th day of this escalating psychic ability, I couldn't take it anymore. I had never been so terrified. At the same time, I'd never felt so enlightened. But it was not a normal life at all. That disappeared on day 1. In fact, by day 2 or 3, I couldn't even imagine what normal life was like anymore. Uh, so so I was terrified, and I decided to go. I was going to go walk somewhere. I didn't know where. I couldn't stay in my house anymore. It was too intense. It was getting to be evening time, and I walked out the door, and it's mid-February, and I'm marching away and walking, and I kept feeling these thoughts, like these monitors talking, and they kept saying, keep your eyes on the light, watch for the signs. And I was going, okay, what does that mean? I'd see a light, a headlight, a star, a moon. I had to see some sort of light physically all the time, and I had to keep my mind from going too far out. And at one point, I felt my logical mind did a complete circle on itself. Every synapse seemed to connect with every other one, and there was no answer why I was going through this. What the hell was going on? Well, I had no choice but to go forward. I finally got down to Guadalupe Street here in Austin, Texas, and by this time, I was pacing down the street. I was terrified. I started crying and praying, and people were kind of making a big circle around me. I finally stopped and just prayed and begged like I never have. And all of a sudden, I felt real warm, like I stepped under a damn heat lamp. It's the middle of February. I look up, and there's this huge light right above me. And I went, wow, all of a sudden, all my fear was gone completely, like that. I couldn't believe it. I didn't know what was going on, but I looked around at this crowd of people staring at me because I'd been crying and praying and frantic, and none of them acknowledged this light, and I didn't care. So I just went back to looking up, and then I realized the light was coming down from the palms of 7 white robed guardian angels and through a glass crystal table about that thick. In fact, I wrote a note down when you were talking about your experience, you mentioned dimensions. Yes, they appeared in certain dimensions. That glass crystal table was about this thick. It wasn't that thick. It wasn't that thick. It was a measurable distance, and they were 6 feet overhead, not 8, not 3. And I'm sitting there looking up at this light is coming out of the palms of these radiant beings, and all of a sudden I realized you're the monitors, you're the guides who've been watching me. And they said, yes, do you trust us? And I said, well, I don't understand what's been going on. They just, shh, do you trust us? I started asking some questions, and finally I got the point. Shut up, Gary. Do you trust us? And I said, yes. And it's kind of a complicated scenario to explain, but within a second or two, I was hit head on by a speeding car. Wham! I was outside my body, watching my body get tumbled over in this car and hit the windshield and fly out toward the street. And all of a sudden, Austin was a little dot. The whole world started shrinking. I was expanding outward in all directions, like a balloon, not like an arrow, just. And all of a sudden, the earth is inside me, and I saw the whole earth from 360 degrees, north, south, east, west, because it was inside me, psychically, spiritually. My body's down there in the street in Austin, Texas, but I pretty quickly forgot about it. In fact, I forgot who I was. I just started expanding, and it was the most beautiful sensation. I did my best to describe it in the book, but it seemed like it went on and on and on. And finally, I got to the edge of what seemed like this universe. And yes, I got a comment once. Some guy said, there's no edge to the universe. Well, I'm not talking physics. I'm talking got to the edge of this universe in the form of recognizing it's a thought. It's a creation of thought, of infinite thought. That's how this universe is here. And I got out of it and I noticed there's universes everywhere. There's infinite universes, infinite time, infinite space. And then all of a sudden, all these universes seem to kind of wrap up into like a circle, a tunnel of light. And that's a very good description. Almost the color of your sweater there, kind of grayish. Spinning clouds being going through it, pure ecstasy, no fear at all, and certainly no awareness of who I was. It was just pure sensation. And then I kind of came out of this tunnel of light and felt like I was kind of maybe a clown shot out of a circus cannon, and
Yeah.
I ended up in this infinite blue void. And it was startling because it was infinite mind. And it had no beginning and no end and no limit and no bias. And it existed by mere principle of existence. And there's nothing that is more powerful. And it either exists and everything, which is the case, or it wouldn't exist and nothing would exist. Nothing has more power than infinite mind. And it was completely biased and completely unbiased and completely beautiful. And this seemed like I was experiencing this and seeing it for eternity. And somewhere in that process, I felt like I was being pulled away. And I use the term in my book, a second eternity. It felt like spiritual gravity. Something was pulling me away from here, and I kind of liked it here, but I was going in reverse. I went through this tunnel of light. I came out on the other side, fell into this universe, started collapsing into time and space. Still no awareness of who I was. But the closer I got to Earth, I started seeing 3 series of images. One, which I write just a paragraph about in the book, was about all the changing times we're going through now. I saw COVID and these wars and global warming, and I saw guys walking around with AK-47 shooting people at Walmart. Can you imagine that in 77? I couldn't, but I saw it. I didn't write about all that. And I've had people on shows say, well, predict something. I say, look at breaking news every 5 minutes, which, you know, but this chaos we're going through is not insane because the second series of pictures I saw were of a whole new world. And it's probably 100 years away. It's when we get into the age of Aquarius and the age of enlightenment. And yes, the earth will probably be physically different, quite different. A lot of land changes, earth changes, global changes, warmer, but we'll learn, we will be out in space, we'll be much more enlightened. And it's not on a particular day, it's a process of going from the age of Pisces that started sometime, ended sometimes in 18 or 1900, depending on who you talk to. And the age of Aquarius is another 2,400-year period. And so there's a lot of overlap. It's not a switch. And we're going through the transformation now from the age of Aquarius to the age of Pisces. So I saw these pictures of the chaos we're seeing now and why it's happening. And I feel so blessed for just seeing that. And then I saw the future of this beautiful world. It's, again, not a particular date. It's a next century or two, but it is beautiful. And it's comes about in phases, in cycles, and it's inevitable. And then I saw these pictures of this guy playing music, and I thought, who's that? And I saw my body on the street, and I jumped right back into my body, like, wow, I'm home here. I felt no pain, nothing. I just been to heaven. I felt such ecstasy, I couldn't even describe it. But it was eerie. Here I am back in my body, and this car smashed up, and this red-haired guy's leaning over me, screaming, panicked. Man, I couldn't stop. I said, get away, get away. I'm okay. I'm not even hurt. I jumped to my feet, and he's freaking out, trying to stop me. And I said, look, I ain't hurt. Just leave me alone. I was trying to figure out what to do. Like there's a logical thing to do next, And so I was just going to walk home. I wasn't hurt. I'll deal with the car later. Screw it. Uh, and I got about 20 feet, and then some people said, no, stay around. The cops are coming, the ambulance, I'm chasing you through the alley. I thought, okay, you're right. I'll just hang around and explain this. Good luck. Because when the cops came and the ambulance came, first of all, they're looking all around for a blood spattered body in the street, and there ain't one. And I'm standing up talking to all these people who were kind of keeping their distance from me. They didn't know what to expect from me, you know. So the cops came up and the medic, and they're trying to have me explain what happened. And as soon as I went into the last week and what had just happened, because that's all I could think about, that didn't register, you know. So yeah, I realized about halfway through every question they asked me that this ain't going to make any sense to anybody. So I can understand. And they were trying to figure something to charge me with. So anyway, I just wanted to go home. The ambulance said, no, we can't. The cops said, no, you go to the ambulance. They took me to the emergency room, x-rayed me, checked me out, nothing. They put a Band-Aid on my head, I think, so they looked like they did something. But they couldn't let me go home because of what I was saying. So they shipped me into a corner of the emergency room, and this guy comes in who I'd seen a premonition about, knew his name, all about him enough. I called his name out, and he said, do you know me? I said, right now, Doc, I know everything. I told him about his career and his wife and some kids and some other stuff, and he was mind blown. He said, how do you know this? I said, man, I know everything right now. What I don't know is what to do next. And I said, well, we don't either, but we can't let you just walk home. Do you understand? Yeah, I can see that because I wouldn't know what to do with me. I can understand why y'all don't want to hear this story. Hell, but you asked me the questions. So they ended up taking me to jail and put me under in jail till they could get someone to sign a protective order of custody to get me in a psychiatric hospital, which didn't bother me at all. I just been to heaven. Nothing could bother me, man. And I was happy, and I was talking to the ex-convicts there, the guys in the jail, and tell them stuff about their case. And the jailers came up and said, "You're not a lawyer. You do not have a right to talk to these people, or we'll put you in solitary confinement." I'll shut up, you know, because I was still having premonitions of everything all the time. I couldn't cut them off. Well, 2 days later, my brother showed up in the sheriff's office upstairs. They dragged me up. He said, "What the hell's going on with you, Gary?" And I tried to explain what I've been going through. And of course, again, it didn't float, but that's the question you asked. Here's the answer. Um, so yeah, they put me in a psychiatric hospital, and I had no problem with that either. I became the entertainer on the avenue. You know, I was playing guitar for people and piano and entertaining them, and convincing that a bunch of 15-year-old girls here that were having sex and their parents put them in a psychiatric hospital rather than explain human sexuality to them, you know. And I was trying to convince them that they're okay, they're healthy, and don't listen to this stuff, and you're a human being, lighten up, you know. So at the end of a week, 10 days, they took me before the whole board of psychiatrists, and they want to check, make sure they can release you, or if they want to keep you up for another 10 days for examination. And I told them, I ain't changing my story. This is what happened. You can believe it or not, but you guys are psychiatrists. You're supposed to know about the mind. And I just went through something that blew my mind, and you people should be studying this, looking into it, because the people with mental disorders and psychiatric people and psychics and creative people, they're on a different wavelength that's actually healthy for humankind to understand. Do you guys get it? Of course, they were blown away by how coherent my argument was, and we can't keep him here, so they let me out. And about a month and a half later, I had another bout. It wasn't quite as strong. Uh, this time, my roommates called my parents, and my mom came down, and they took me to Brackenridge, and she signed a paper for me to go to this time the Austin State Hospital, because I was so peaked up that it took me literally 8 months to kind of come down to natural, normal, so I could deal with things without still feeling things in advance. Um, I kept asking my guides, why me? I mean, no complaints. This was a beautiful experience, but why did I get it? What did I possibly do to deserve this? And that started the day I had the experience, and I kept asking them. But it was sometime in the fall, October, September, somewhere in that time, that I was out on my porch playing guitar once again, thinking, why did this happen to me? Can't you guys answer? And all of a sudden, I felt them in my front yard. And they shot this light into my head and start speaking in this same low, monotone James Earl voice that I'd heard 8 months earlier. Do you trust us? They were talking in that same voice. At the same time, I was seeing like screen credits roll off in the distance like a movie, and they're reading it exactly what they're saying. And it seemed to go quite slow, but it was very fast. And they basically said, you had this experience because you always wanted to know, you were curious, you were an altar boy, you're always asking God for the truth. You read about Edgar Cayce, you were digging and searching, so you could handle the truth, and you were ready, so we took you and we brought you back. And that's why the car accident gave us a perfect opportunity. And you would come back so shocked that you had to be taken care of. And even before that, I kept feeling like cops, the ambulance, the judge, the court, the psychiatric hospital, EMS, parents, friends, they were all grounding agents. In some form, they were helping me stay grounded. So I didn't float back out there again because my vibration was so high, I almost could, you know, but I had life to complete. And so that's what happened to me. In 1980, I met a lady who gave me a reading by a method called lithomancy. She was one of the most gifted psychics I've ever known, and I've known a lot because I worked at psychic fairs and started giving readings, like I said, in the early 70s. Uh, I met her in 1980, and she described these monitors as high intelligent beings that were sort of their special job is to take people like me there and back. They're like ushers, monitors. They did my job, they moved on, and now they're working with somebody else. Because the other side has a system of priorities too, escalation, like a big business. It's just not competitive. It's intermingling, creating. But 1980, when I met her, she did a reading this way and taught me her method, and I wrote a book about it. That's how I give readings now. A method called lithomancy, Lithomancy. In fact, you can Google lithomancy and you'll find my contact information, which I think is also in the chat. But the system involves 16 stones: Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto. Those are the planet stones. And then 6 other ones personal that are love, life, luck, commitment, timing, and place. And people drop them into a circle, or when I do them over the phone, they say drop, I drop them. I start reading from the center up to 12 o'clock, around like a clock for 12 weeks, record the reading. Can't tell everybody everything, and not supposed to. But I like the method. It's real intuitive. The stones never land the same place twice. You can have a deck of tarot cards, and there's only so many combinations. So I really like this free form method of readings. I did a little tarot and a little palmistry, but I like something that I could just wouldn't have necessarily study the rules so much. If I know what the planets represent, and I can look at the pattern and see how stones touch and connect and so forth, I'll let the pattern talk to me. I'll let it teach me how to interpret it. So that's sort of about my near-death experience and about how I got into reading stones. And if you've got any questions, or anybody does, I know if someone said something about when did this happen. It happened in 1977 here in Austin. I first started noticing it at January 31st of 77. It's the day I quit the band and started becoming real. February 7th, 1977, about 6 o'clock, 6:30, something like that. That's when I had the experience and was involved in the car wreck and so forth. And from that moment on, my life changed. you know?
Gary, has that continued on? Like, so those are incredible, and thank you for sharing. And I did read your book, so I had some insight into this type of stuff. But when you hear you talk about it, there's an energy that comes from it, and it's funny. Quite frankly, you were talking in one part of your discussion. I was thinking in my mind, what year was that? And that 1 second after that, and that was in 1977. You said,
Mhm.
it's like, holy smokes. I mean, it it's an amazing sense. I mean, I believe that all of us have some gifts,
Absolutely.
but have your gifts carried on? I mean, obviously you do readings and stuff for people, but to the extent that you have these people of wisdom overseeing you,
I
have you
don't, I
have you
don't,
done?
I don't need that sort of extremism. I'm in a way more intuitive now because I'm relaxed and can deal with it and so forth, make use of it, turn it off. Then it was maybe more extreme, but kind of I couldn't even handle it. I was terrified. It was
Yeah.
too much. But I feel very blessed in having experienced, and in turn hoping to encourage other people to believe in the power of your mind, your spirit, or your intentions. You have no idea how much power it has. And I wouldn't have believed that or even thought that way had I not gone through this. I didn't know the term near death experience. I never even thought about it. All of a sudden, I was baptized and taken to heaven and back. Thank you, universe.
Wow. So it's a gift. You look at it as a gift because I know some people have considered it to be a negative in their life until they got to a grounded spot. And we had talked earlier, Gary, before they started the show, that we're going to let this meeting go and this discussion go where he likes. So I see somebody's raised their hand. Is it Ewan? And you want to
Yeah, hey,
unmute
Julian,
yourself? You want
Julian,
to ask
doesn't
Gary a
matter.
question?
Yeah, sure. So I'm not sure if right now is like, the Q&A session. There was an issue with the link and I just got here like, like 15 minutes ago. Anyway, Gary, if my question is not like in the right topic, feel free to just let me know. But my question is this: with regard to your out-of-body experiences, with regard to, you mentioned guides, right?
Mhm.
One thing that I'm kind of trying to, I don't want to say figure it out. I don't know if you could figure it out, but trying to get a handle on, so to say, is like there's this whole aspect about, extraterrestrials, non-human intelligence, and that's a whole big bag of, things, right? Cryptoterrestrials, extraterrestrials, whatever, interdimensional, right? That's like one bag. Then there's like another kind of like area of domain of of topics, which is like spirituality, guides, talking to your higher self, talking to your guides, meditation, that whole aspect. The two have to overlap. But anyway, but my question to you is, do you see your guides, and all that your experiences as something spiritual, as something related to non-human intelligence, or is it all just one big pot?
Well,
What's
I
your
think
take on it?
the last 4 or 5 words are really the truth. It's all one collective essence of infinite mind seeing itself infinite ways. But you got one set of genes, Mark has one set of genes, I have another. We all have unique experiences, and no two physical objects can be at the same place at the same time, so no two people can experience exactly the same thing on the physical level. On the spiritual level, there's not this feeling of separation so much. Everything is one big mystical working together syrup. The levels UFOs can manifest and do to get people's curiosity. They're not all the same. They're not all from the same spot. They're not all the same level of consciousness. Some of them may not even see each other. But it's like we are getting exposed to, not only through things like that, the unexplainable, but the very society breakdown we're going through. We're all having to question things. Good, because if we start questioning things, we might see the holes in the boat and fix them. And if we don't, our boat's going to sink. So things are less separate up there. We see them as separate because, and I think in terms of my guides, I saw 7 guides. I didn't see a big bowl of infinite cornflakes.
Right.
But things
Um,
appear to us on that way so we can comprehend them.
it makes sense. Yeah, yeah. Um, and that the answer to that, first of all, I kind of get a similar sort of where my mind is at with regard to these things. I'm being led kind of towards the same thing that you just said, by the way. And therefore, my last question for now is, okay, so we as beings, right? We have guides. We have other,
More
intelligences.
guides than we're more guides than we can
Oh,
even imagine. More levels of consciousness that are willing to help us than we can count.
it's weird because you're basically saying it's like, yeah, the same page. I totally agree. Um, but then here's a question. Do other beings also have guides? Whether it's reptilians, greys, mantises, or
Well, let me
light
look at
beings, they must
let
also.
me
I mean, we can't be the only ones with guides, right?
no, we're certainly not. We're certainly not the only species that exists. Uh, but there's also, and this may seem like a jump, but that's the way I learned to look at the world. If you go to the store tomorrow and you make a right turn instead of a left turn like you normally do, you helped create a universe tomorrow in which you took a right turn. And that's different from the universe you would help co-create if you turn left, right?
Right, because of all the decision tree and everything forks.
Multi-universes
Right.
are
Yep.
always in play all the time.
Hmm.
We see seamlessness. It seems like 1 second goes in, but there's multi-universes. So it depends on your perspective, period. Number one. Number two, truth, absolute truth is infinite. So there's a big, big difference between infinite absolute truth, infinite mind, and our individual experiences and ability to assimilate information or experience. There's a big gap there. But every step we take toward exploring that is putting more gas in our tank, is helping us. So your search is right, but be patient with the understanding. It's an art to learn how to communicate with your higher mind, your guides, just like it's an art to play tennis or chess or violin or anything. Life's an art. And there's not a button on our head we push to go, oh, now I got it all. No, it's a
Right.
process. It's a process.
Right.
And if we didn't go through curveballs and changes and surprises, we'd be dumber than a rock. We'd never learn anything. Someone wrote over here, do you think the monitors made your experience possible? Bruce asked that. To some degree, I think they made it possible, but they were like they were the guides. They took me here. My own curiosity seemed to precipitate the event, and that's why I stress to people, ask questions, be curious. Absolutely. Yes, other beings and raised up guides and elders, absolutely. There's life throughout the planet. I can't say, for example, what kind of life there is on what planet. If I knew, I'd write a book about it, and science would either prove it or disprove it. Who knows? But I think there's infinite possibilities. There really are. There are infinite possibilities. There's infinite universes. Now, all this theoretical infinite crap may not make sense, but if you think about it, it opens you up to infinite possibilities too.
Right.
Creativity, thinking, learning. You don't get your master's degree in biology the same day you start as a freshman, right? It takes time.
Yeah, no, thank you, Gary. And the weird part is that as even as like a layman dilettante, the more you read about physics, fundamental theories of everything, things like that, everything you're saying is by now actually kind of in the vicinity of the actual default assumption. And it's only like surprises to the contrary of what you just said like that would be changing what kind of like I don't want to say the consensus, but kind of like the big spot of where much of the greatest minds where they're at with regard to these kind of topics. So yeah, what you're saying is actually basically where things are kind of gravitating towards to right now. And not just, aliens and spirit, enthusiasts, but like, fundamental physics, like all of that. So yeah, same page. And Gary, thank you
Well,
for addressing my question.
I was an electrical engineer in college, and I still read a lot about quantum physics. And for example, one theory in quantum physics is random quantum fluctuations. At the beginning of the Big Bang, things happen a little bit randomly, which put a bunch of stuff here and nothing here because it went out, supposedly. It created space and time. But I don't believe they're random. I believe it's higher mind creating a space and a time in the universe for us to exist. In
Right.
fact, I believe that the quantum level, the smallest of smallest level, is actually the interface between spirituality, thought, that world, and the physical world. It's at
Well,
the
yeah, of course. I
smallest
mean,
of the
just a double
small.
slit experiment involving consciousness. Right there's a connection. What
And phys
exactly and how exactly, obviously, still a mystery, but there's a connection, and it's been proven in, more than almost any other physics related theory, like, in the history of physics. So,
and
yeah.
physics is now having to consider that. There's a book I read by Dr. Ruth Kasner, uh, Quantum Interpretations. I forgot. Oh, transactional relationships of quantum mechanics. And it's like there's a translation every time, a transfer of energy, a yes, a no, a plus, a minus that makes everything happen. But even in her book, and this is a physicist, she has a chapter or section on free will. Now, how many physicists jump into free will? But she explains how it happens in her interpretation of quantum physics. So, yeah, even quantum physics now is going, when we get down to the smallest of the small, we don't know what makes it be there. And that's
Yeah.
where the
Yeah.
fabric the interface between infinite consciousness and physical separation begins. I saw that in 77. It blew my mind. And 45 years later, the science is starting to go, hey, I think that's where it's at. Yep, certainly is.
Yeah. Thank you, Gary.
You too, my man.
It's absolutely amazing, Gary, how you can engage a group. Even in your speech that I first saw you, and I immediately bought your book, which I hope people in this chat actually do. You'll be better for it. But the idea, we've talked on this show about manifestation and watch your thoughts, like control your thoughts, because those are the things that create reality. I went through about 4 months of manifestation challenge where before I went to bed and when I first wake up, I would put those thoughts in my head and carry them with me. And I solved all 5 of these issues. I'd mentioned to the people in this group how I know through proof the creator had brought it to me that, hey, this is how it works. And if you put these thoughts forward, and be careful what your thoughts are, because be careful what you ask for, because it is there. You think negatively, you get negatively. If you think positively, you get positively. So thoughts are that connection to the universe. Manifestation is a result of those thoughts, and that's my take on it. Anyways, and we've talked about it on this show before, and I think this is an endless conversation. It's stimulating beyond belief for people who want to know more and experience very unique things. And Gary, thank you for taking us where you've taken us. It's a very interesting start to the night. If anyone else has any other questions or they want to ask Gary some more stuff, feel free. We probably have
I was gonna add something, because you mentioned the most powerful use of free will ever. The most powerful gift humans have is in free will, is in your thoughts, your intentions, your perception. It's never the situation in life, it's how we look at the situation. Because how we look at the situation means how we're going to act or react to it next. And we can always change the way we look at the situation. We can't change our genes or history or past or other people or 10 billion things, but we can always change the way we look. And I went through such depression in my 20s, serious depression, and such fear and such anxiety and such insecurity. Just as a musician, I had a crappy voice, man. It took me 10 years to realize that, you know what? I ain't gonna be a good singer, but I can make people laugh at me. Pays the bills. You know, I can make them wonder how I got this damn gig. You know,
yeah. You got one of the best gigs in the world, Gary.
Pardon me?
You now have one of the best gigs in the world.
Oh yeah, I feel so lucky. I got to make a living playing music and traveling all over. And once I became a soloist and quit worrying about the fact that I can't sing and became a good entertainer and could do any song I wanted my way and traveled all over Europe freely without having to talk to 5 guys, that was like heaven. I couldn't believe it, because in 77, I was going through so much depression trying to figure out how to fit into a band. And just to underscore to your listeners, our listeners, it's the power of intentions. I asked my guide to help me figure out a way to make a living, and they offered me an opportunity through a lot of circumstances to play in a bunch of country bands in the 1980s instead of traveling all over. I made a bunch of money. I started teaching myself piano at 33, so I'd have 2 instruments. But 4 years later, I talked my way into some piano bars and can't sing that well and can't play that well. But as you and the guests can tell, I can talk. I became a good entertainer. I made people laugh. It's always about what you can do, not what you can't do, not what you missed, not what didn't happen.
Gary, let's move to Tiffany. Tiffany, I see you want to unmute yourself and ask away. Your microphone is there's something wrong with your microphone, Tiffany. Okay. Tiffany, if you want to write your question in the and then we'll get Gary to answer it from there. So Gary, back. So your thoughts go into wanting to be in a band, wanting to be this, that, the other thing, and you've just progressed through this cycle of different experiences, which you've led yourself to, and now you're here on our show, which is, I must be the top of the pack here, even from the seven the seven people, the watchers, who are, I suspect, are probably watching us now, out of interest, but and having maybe a good laugh at that. But Gary, have you seen this thing go in peaks and cycles? Maybe because you've steered it that way.
Everything is cycles. Everything in the universe is cycles. Always, always will be, always has been. But
Yeah.
so that's a given. Night, day, male, female, birth, death. But I always suggest to people that you can make the challenging, difficult cycles shorter and get more bang for your buck and make them more meaningful by the same way you can make the good times stretch out longer. And it's always, what's life telling me? If I'm doing something good and it's working, keep making that work. If I'm hitting walls and banging my head, maybe life's saying, hey, change your system, upgrade. We can learn from every experience we ever have. And I didn't believe that because I believed I was depressed and anxiety ridden about every experience I had until I learned to go, you know what? Screw that. I love myself. This is my package. I don't sing very well, but I learned to make people laugh at me, and that's, and entertain. Uh, so yeah, it's all about what you can do and break it through. You can read some of these things and ask me. One person says, did you see future like biblical prophets? I saw a lot of this change, and I was not shocked because I'd read a lot of Edgar Cayce, and he talked about all the change in the future. Uh, I saw certainly some parallels, and I think some of it's inevitable. Uh, the Earth is getting warmer because we've added a bunch of warmth to it. We may be able to change it, but there's things we can't change. There's cycles that humankind has started, and there's cycles that would happen even if humans weren't here. Cycles are guaranteed, absolutely. But if it weren't for cycles, we'd never grow, evolve, or learn anything. And this new cycle we're going through, yeah, it's challenging right now to everybody. Emotions, fears, doubts, confusion, politics, global warming, inflation. But you know what? Here's where peace is. Here's where knowledge is. It's the only place it really is. And not only that, it's unlimited. The only thing that's unlimited in our lives is how much we can grow spiritually or psychically or mentally or emotionally. Everything else is limited, including how many years we'll be around here making things work or trying them. So tap into the unlimited power. That's why we're going through all this in the world now.
You also, how do you know what bad is until good is? So all these experiences
Absolutely.
allow you to put things into perspective. And people think, is this the worst experience of my life? And then I'll give you an example, a very deep one that touched my heart. I lost a son in a car crash in 2006, about 8 days before his 18th birthday.
Mhm.
And I learned about myself. Certainly, I miss him and all those energies that came from him, and all. I wondered what could have been, but I became so much better as a person from that experience. You think, how can you learn something from that kind of a catastrophe? And to think that you can, you can get through that. You can get through anything in this world. And I don't fear death. All my discussions with near-death experiencers, none of them fear death.
Mhm.
They're all like you. They're excited about the next thing that's going to go on. But I don't want to take up all your time on this. So Tiffany has written something here, and I can't read it because I'm too far away from the small screen that has it. Are you able to see it?
Yeah, yeah. It says, what do you think that was meant, talking about the purpose of being able to influence the thoughts of others? Like I said, I'm not sure I was influencing them or picking them up. I couldn't tell the difference really. And that was mystical, strange, and I guess you could say, confusing and mysterious and charming enough. And I always kind of have that thought, what is fate? What is predictable? How much free will do we have? How much? And the questions go on. And some of them don't have exact specific answers. Like I couldn't tell exactly if I was, how much I was picking up someone's thought. I hope to God I wasn't influencing people. Like I said, right after I noticed I was having a connection with random strangers, I thought, man, don't think car wreck. Or, how do you stop your mind from thinking stuff?
Yeah.
So it made me very aware of every thought I had. And you speak
And this
about,
is another question. Sorry to interrupt. That would just kind of got lost. That's connected to what you're saying. How can you turn it off? Someone asked that because
well, it
being
took me a
telepathic
while.
perhaps is overwhelming.
Well, it took me a while. Like I said, I went to a psychiatric hospital twice because I didn't know how to turn it off. I had no idea it was controllable by chemicals, that sort of thing. First time I was given lithium carbonate. Second time I was given Thorazine, pretty heavy. But even though it took a week or two for me to even calm down with that degree of medication. So the medication helped. The fact that cycles came in, I had the experience and now the other side of it, which was healing, which was beneficial, which was learning, which was sort of coming to terms with A, how lucky I was and what all I saw, and B, what do I do with this now? And that took me a while to figure out what to do. Well, I couldn't do anything with it right now. I just went about my life, played music, but I started giving readings a lot. So yeah, there was there- go ahead.
Ralph?
With me,
Yeah, it's for you, Ralph. Go ahead.
uh, I'd like you to explain a little more about your freedom or what you understand our freedom can be. You don't have any likes or dislikes?
Did you say about freedom?
Yes, you spoke about freedom.
Well, freedom is in your head, in your heart, in your mind, in your spirit, because basically, number one, we experience life from the inside anyway, no matter what it is, whether it's a new pair of shoes or it's raining, the good, bad, and ugly, we interpret on the inside. Freedom is really the power to accept, comprehend as best as possible, learn, benefit, and be pleased and grateful for what you're going through right now, because nothing is in vain. Now, if you think it's in vain because you see it in vain. I personally learned to know and acknowledge that nothing's in vain. You can learn from everything. So real freedom is allowing yourself, first of all, to even accept that as a Pepsi challenge, that freedom is really on the inside. If you're incarcerated in a dungeon, an innocent prisoner, you ain't very physically free. But Nelson Mandela was there for 25 years. People have been, you may not be able to free your body, but you have no idea how much your spirit, your intentions, your thoughts, your attitudes, your techniques, meditation, prayer, thinking outside the box. There's 4 or 5 of them. And if you practice those, you become happier, you find freedom, and no matter what the damn curveball is, you got a bat that you can use against it,
Yeah.
And you ain't gonna hit every curveball, but it's a numbers game. You hit more than less, you get higher points on the scoreboard. Da-da! Did that
Well,
answer your question, Rolf?
well, yes, of course, in your mind, I guess, and even psychologically, you can feel free occasionally.
Or
But
forever.
real freedom is when you like everybody's music equally. You don't have any, type of music that you especially like better than other music.
Well,
Since
I
you're a
think
musician.
you could have there's 8 billion people on this planet. You could have 8 billion opinions of what freedom is or music, or what music is enjoyable. There's not a necessarily a consensus of opinion other than sort of how the English language works and common sense. But the fact is, everything we experience on the inside. Even if you cut your hand, the pain goes up to your brain and said, wow, look out, you're cut. And so if we turn that light on, which is a process and a continuous process, we always have to keep updating. But the process of updating should not be difficult, because it's never how hard you work in life. It's how smart, it's how wise, it's how open-minded, it's how creative, it's how inspired, it's how determined. And if you use those kind of attitudes, then home run or not, you're going to benefit. And if you don't use those attitudes, the other extreme, doesn't matter what happens, you're going to be unsatisfied, or anywhere in between that spectrum. We get to decide. You for you, me for me. And what is absolute truth? What is absolute freedom? What is the best music? Well, you got 8 billion opinions, but yours is the one that matters.
Well, but if you were totally free, you have only one opinion.
Well,
Because
I'm not going to play verbal.
free.
I'm not going to play verbal semantics with you. You can define it the way you want.
No,
I tend to,
you're not the only one that I've heard say that they are free. But I think, yeah, you may think so, but in fact, the moment you are born, you already have a stamp on yourself.
well, yeah, like I said, depends on how you want to, it defines how you want to define it. You want to define,
But
wait,
then
listen, hold on. You've already said from the moment you're born, you're stamped. I say from the moment you're born, you're on the path to enlightenment. Are you right, or am I right, or both right?
Many different paths.
Many different paths, no two the same. No
We have
two.
another question here. We got Melanie. Why don't you take yourself off mute and spill your question?
Thanks. There's a couple of geologists and geographers in the audience. So our questions are about the lithomancy.
I saw that, yeah.
Yes. So each kind of rock has a different frequency, different chemical. So when you're throwing them, when you're dropping them, and how they feel in your hands, what is it that makes them unique? What makes them useful? I mean, how do they feel when you're doing it? Yeah.
What makes them work is attitude, perception, and technique. Now, I don't know that much about the mineralogy. I'm sure this guest who wrote probably does. I look at how they point, what they mean, what they represent, if they touch each other. I let them talk to me. I really do. But on the other hand, I lived in Europe in the 90s, and a lot of people knew I gave readings, and I didn't always have my stones with me. And so whether it was a friend of a friend or a customer or a bartender, I started giving readings occasionally by having people come up to my apartment, and on a table, just a dining table, I'd say, arrange some stuff, guitar string, an ashtray, a earring, I'm going to go make some tea. And when I come back, I'm going to read what you laid out on the table. And I would go make some tea, and I'd come back and I'd look at these items the way they laid it out, and I'd be able to get information from them. Why? Number one, because I know and I believe that every human being has a port to infinite mind, much less the levels that are lower than it, right? So I believe that, I know that, I plug that in. I just say, this is gonna work. Why not? And so I've done a lot of readings that don't even involve stones at all. I use intuition, I use gut instinct, I use the fact that I constantly ask my guides to help me, to form me, to keep me on track. Before I do a reading, first thing I do is I meditate, and then I get a deck of cards, and my own simple method of cutting the cards. I always ask my guides if they're with me, And of course, they always say yes. In fact, they say it in a different way every time. But I don't talk myself out of being able to learn how to communicate. I talk myself into it. And if people really want power, talk yourself into pulling on that umbilical cord that connects you to infinite mind. Meditate. Turn your worried, frantic mind off for 5 minutes a day, not thinking, meditating. Mantra, a sound, a color, think of one thing. Get used to the techniques of improving yourself. I taught myself piano, guitar, taught myself to write, taught myself lithomancy, taught myself to be an actor. I never had a lesson in any of this. None of it. I took acting lessons, you know. In fact, my acting teacher said, I spent 8 years playing solo, and when I first started taking acting, and he said, Gary, you're all over the damn page. Just deliver the lines and shut up. And I would, and it actually worked better. He said, you got so much expression all over your face that you need to really bring it down. So I learned that at 59 or 61 or something like that.
So
But
it's the relationship between things and how people
absolutely.
affect what's the little micro
Right.
relationships between things.
It's
Okay,
not really the
thank you.
stones. They're just a symbol. In fact,
Yeah.
I use a regular deck of playing cards because I didn't want to go memorize all the tarot cards. I know what numbers mean to me, and I know what hearts and diamonds and spades and face cards and jokers mean to me. And they may mean something completely different to somebody else, but that's fine and dandy too. You know? So you can learn a lot in your own mind with your own intentions, learning your own techniques. And the more you put that in mind of discovering your own power and your own techniques, the more you'll do exactly that. Because you put your mind to something and you practice it, and you're open-minded and creative, and if you ask your guides to help and are patient, and you could add a couple other good virtues to that list, but hell, take 5 of those virtues and go to town with them and make it work. You know, that makes sense, girl?
Nancy's next, Gary. Nancy, you want to unmute yourself? There you are.
Yep.
Ask
So
away.
thank you. So you guys were talking about stones a minute ago, and I am so into rock hounding. I just love to go. I live in Vegas, and I just keep going to all these different states around me. And I even took geology for a little while, and then I was like, no, I want to feel the energy from them. And I collect the most odd. I mean, they can be like little, if you saw around me, you'd laugh, but they can be little and tiny like this, or they could be like big, and these get heavy as I walk around and trying to. Don't worry, I only take the ones I'm allowed to. Otherwise, I might take some really big ones. But my point is, none of them look the same. It's an energy that I feel, and I was just wondering if everybody else and anyone else feels that at all, because I'm drawn to certain, not necessarily colors, although some, of course, when you get them wet, they change the color. So that's always interesting too, but it's always an energy. And I got into crystals for a while too, but I didn't know where they had been, and all of that. I like to find the stones and the rocks because I feel like I may be really crazy, and people would agree with that, but I feel like the stones, they, like, animals have walked over them, or people have walked over them, and you don't know who's been around them, and the energy, the sun, everything. I think it's just, I know that all of my collection is, and it just keeps growing, but it makes me feel better when I feel like I'm losing energy. I just go over and start picking up all the rocks, and just it really helps me. So anyway, I was just wondering if anybody else feels that way. No.
Melanie seems to agree. And I would say whatever technique, methodology, system, item that helps you evolve, grow, do better, be happier, learn more, because knowledge is power in any area of life. So everything you benefit with, and you may benefit from geology and knowing a lot about them. I don't know. I can barely tell. I can tell obsidian and turquoise, and that's about it. And agate maybe. But I use them to see patterns, to
Yeah.
see point and touch. Like I said, I've used objects on a table too,
Hmm.
because it's all symbolism. But you're right. Stones do have vibrations. No two are alike. They're the most colorful objects. And throughout history, people viewed stones and from pyramids to, meditation to
Yeah.
technique to healing to, because they do have a sort of power of concentration.
Yeah.
So,
I do really believe that I feel it's their energy sometimes. I
mhm.
really
Oh yeah.
do. And I feel more energized once I've, held them or even just sat around them for a while. I mean, even you can even get hot stone massages and stuff. So,
Mhm.
they
Mhm.
definitely do help our body, I believe anyway. So I just
Mhm.
wanted to throw that out there.
Thanks, Nancy. And also people in the comments are also saying they do have similar type of things. But I'm amazed at some of the rocks that I see, and then when I wet them, how they change so
Mhm.
dramatically.
Mhm.
So I mean, and then you see it polished. It's like, wow, like, it's gone from a dusty rock that I kicked on the pathway to looking at it, wetting it, and then polishing it. It goes
Right.
from what Gary was before when he was in the band to in with the board of seven overseeing his exploration of the universe.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of parallels in a lot of this stuff that we have. But anyways, but yeah, so there are lots of people in there saying the same thing. So by the way, everyone in this call, almost everyone's on mute. So even if they said something that they are, you wouldn't have heard them anyways. So anyways, we have iPhone 3. I think that's probably Susan Johnson.
Yeah, yes, that's me.
Okay, you're on, Susan. Ask your
Yeah,
question.
when I was in Mineral, Iowa, like I was working at the Dwayne Arnold nuclear plant, I went to this marble rock quarry, and I picked up, and it looks like I thought it was like some kind of shock type meteorite or something, because it was like on the outside it looks like any white river rock, but on the inside it's got concentric rings made of like gray and green and tan and gray, and it's got a little white center. Do you know what kind of rock that is? I don't know. Am I able to show a picture of it?
If you can put it on your phone right now, sure.
Wait a minute.
You have to turn your camera on.
I'm surprised I found a rock in my backyard about this big. Had all these like a, old shellfish. I took a picture of it, sent it to UT geologist, and it's some creature from 150, 200 million years ago. And the rock's in my backyard. That's kind of neat.
Yeah, I know.
And was that could have been ammonite? What do you think this one is?
Boy, I have no idea. So
Yeah, no idea either.
I'll pass that to the geologist that may be on.
Yeah.
Also, another question I have is, you said so. You said you're on the board of 7 up there.
Talking to me?
Yes.
I said I saw 7 monitors, 7 spiritual guides, 7 protectors, guardian angels. Uh,
Do you know where they're from? What race?
No, I don't. They're just one of many levels of higher consciousness that is part of our universe, that they can help and participate in human development and growth, but they cannot interfere with your free will. And that's why they asked me over and over, do you trust us? If we really want our guides to talk to us, we have to ask them, we have to be patient, we have to practice the art of interpretation, just like if you're learning Chinese and don't know it. It's a process. But yeah, I feel like everybody has more guides than they even realize. And we think of it in terms of numbers because in time and space, we think of Mark, you're one person, I'm another. Separation, 2. like I said, when it gets out there, it's not divided into numbers so so conveniently, or
Right.
more, or more or less.
You know about the alien hybrids on the planet, right? And the work that we're doing.
Well, I'm not familiar with your particular work, but I know there's a lot of transformation, and I talk to my guides rather often about it, as a matter of fact. So I may not know what your particular.
So what does the guide say?
Well, they talk to me all the time. It depends on what I'm doing. If I'm doing a reading, they're saying one thing. If I'm, you know, I have a pretty steady communication, but not to the point of being neurotic or driving me crazy. It's just like once in a while I need some information and I'll plug it in. For example, 10 years ago, I asked my guide to help me find stuff. I kept misplacing keys and everything. And I went, my synapses know where they are, my guides know where they are, my conscious mind doesn't, so I ain't gonna go look for them, okay? That ain't working. You guys, if you'd be so kind, just kind of pull me toward them. And everything from that moment I tried that about 12, 15 years ago with my keys, I found my keys as within 30 seconds. I put that intention in after searching the drawers for 30 minutes, went, screw this, I ain't gonna look no more. Y'all help me find them. Through, done. Went back into the kitchen, poured myself a coffee, and there's my keys right next to me. Fell off a microwave where I'd left them. Boy, you speak of instantaneous results. But as soon as I picked them up, I felt my guides tell me, as clear as I'm talking to you, they said, Gary, we don't have legs, the keys, they can't walk, but your system works. Try it, perfect it, turn it on to other people. And I have mentioned that to a lot of people. Think about finding stuff. Think about this. Put this in your mind. Put the intentions. You don't get everything, but the more you intend to find your keys or grow or solve your problems or become more enlightened or learn to love more or anything, when we put our intentions there and we start practicing that, more than likely we'll get a partial result, if not a complete one, and maybe some ice cream on the cake too, just for good intentions. Ta-da! Nice universe.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. You know?
Just so, Gary, just so people that are watching this on YouTube into the future, your website, which is GARYWIMMER.com, you do readings and that sort of thing. So if people want to go to you and do that, you do private readings and stuff like that for people. So I'm going to try it myself sometime, Gary, but I think people that, like, I have such interest in some of the topics that you got into. I'm concerned about taking people in this kind of a discussion into those things. But one of the things that I have, well, I see Bruce has come up with a question, but I want to talk to you after, not after, but when Bruce has finished his comment, is the idea of the precognition or the future that as you have seen it and been brought to you, and how it sort of played out and it's come through. But let's let I'd like to let Bruce have his say first, if that's okay. Bruce, go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much, Mark. Gary, back in 1977, I graduated from college and I went on into the oil industry. And I didn't realize that I was being set up. So in 1981, I was asked by an invisible entity whether I would help somebody in need. And the entity said yes. And then I said, when will I meet her? And he said, before the year is out. Well, I met her at a Christmas party on December 15th, 1983. And then she moved into my new house with me, and we lived together for 7 years exactly. She was extremely psychic. She could see through my eyes and tell me what I was reading and things of this nature. She could just pull information out of thin air, it seemed. She was precognitive, telekinetic, you name it. And after she died 7 years later, on the same day she had moved in, the 12th of January, she continued to communicate with me. And so I got to meet one of my guides, if you will, and knew her personally and by name. Did you, were you told a name by any of your monitors?
They didn't have names. They didn't even, in fact, when I looked up and saw them on February 7th, 1977, through a crystal table, they had their hands, and then I could see through their hands. They were in white, kind of grayish robes, but their faces were almost like white or gray, like a raster on TV, as if to say, our faces don't matter. It's our presence that matters. Uh, so, and I never saw them from that time forward. I felt them many times during that week, and they appeared. I didn't see them in October of that year when they told me why I had this experience, which I'd been asking and asking. I didn't see them then, but they sure left me a profound message. I don't feel them so much anymore once in a while, but it's like I know that they're, it's just like you have a job here and then you quit that job and go to another job. It's kind of like what they do. Uh, Even though they're spirits, they can't be all at once everywhere, because that's the only thing that can be all at once everywhere all the time is infinite consciousness. And they're just a part of it, branch off the tree, like right behind you, you know.
Right. Well, I figured that after 7 years after she had died, my communication with her gradually diminished. And even though I can still call out to her and get her to respond, during that 7 years following her death, she did spectacular things to help me out. She stopped an oil rig from drilling so that I could catch up describing cores that were being pulled out of the ground. And they had to rebuild the transmission, and they gave me the 4 days I needed. After her funeral, I'd come back from Texas after burying her, and my boss said, well, you've got to stay here and describe all these cores that came out while you were gone. And I realized there was just no way I would be able to do that physically. And so I called out to her, and she said, okay, honey, I'll see what I can do. And bang, the rig was shut down. Did you ever have anything like that happen to you?
Well, I've never had an oil rig shut down, but I've had a lot of miracles in my life, and a lot of psychic experiences. Now, a couple of them, like my near-death experience, and a couple others, I've had friends appear in my house. I've had roommates whose mother passed away many years ago, and she appeared in my house and told me right 5 minutes after she passed away to tell him I'm cool, I'm happy, I'm out of here. It's like a teenager. She was a 72-year-old woman that looked so thrilled to be leaving. So I see souls like that and experiences like that, and some of them are pretty dramatic, but most of them are quite subtle. Most of the psychic experiences people have are quite subtle. And so listen to the subtlety, because you'll get more information there by subtly tuning in than waiting for the big bang and the neon signs and the absolute confirmation, you know.
Oh, those neon signs are so spectacular and fun.
They're great. I loved my experience. The most joyful, beautiful thing I have ever gone through. Do I need to go through it again? Nope. I've been baptized. I don't need to go through it. I saw what I needed to know, plus a lot more.
Well, thank you for sharing.
Yeah, and to you, my friend, keep talking to your lady. She's what I was feeling a moment ago. Now that I remind myself, she was with you for a while till you healed and got back on your feet, and then it's kind of like she said, "You got a whole life ahead of you. Go do it."
Right. She told me after she died who she was spiritually.
Mm-hmm.
That blew my mind, because she said that she was the one of the goddesses of Egypt and of Sumer, and her name was Kahra, or the Spirit of God, and she proved it to me. So, I don't know whatever I did to get that privilege to actually meet somebody who would help create an ancient civilization, but she knew all about that.
When I met this lady in 1980 named Alice Warhol, I was going through some pretty difficult challenges then. I met her in 1980. She did a reading for me. We got to be close friends. We were close friends our whole life. She was incredibly gifted, but had a funky car and funky family, and shit was always broken. And I was helping her pay her rent and her bills. And she was always saying, "Gary, thank you. I can't pay you back." And I kept saying, "Alice, I'll pay in advance anything because all I want from you, really, the most beautiful thing you could give me is when you pass over, become my guide." And she is. And I put a stone representing her right next to me when I do a reading. Intentions followed through by a physical conduit. Intentions matter. Intentions are so important because you can't fool the universe or yourself. You can fool the world, but you can't fool yourself with your own intentions, you know. And
That's
that
the most problematic thoughts I've had is that nothing that I do is not being observed.
oh, absolutely. Our guides see everything, but they can't participate. They can tap you on the shoulder and they can tickle your subconscious and make you curious, and they can present situations or be willing to appear in situations that are tough, that are challenging, because that's the most likely time we reach out, not when everything's going perfect, you know.
Exactly.
But we have to choose to answer the phone or to call them or to practice, because otherwise they can be observers and tap us on the shoulder. But if we don't answer the phone, we ain't going to get the benefit of the call. Ta-da.
It's
Simple.
interesting that you should say this. Mark, you should get Susan back on because that's how she communicates with her beings.
Mm-hmm.
Always they click or tap her or whatever.
No, yeah, I feel them. I don't physically feel them so much. Thank God they don't tap me too much because I have a trouble walking and I don't want them to knock me over, you know. But feeling confirmation, yes, I get it all the time, but I ask for it too. And I ask for it consistently. And it's not like our guides don't know, but it's the more we keep asking, the more we keep that intention, the more we keep that plant alive, just like fertilizer and water. Ta-da! Cause and effect. Everything manifests by cause and effect. Make a new cause, practice it, and bring about a new effect. Whether it's communicating with your guides, learn how to live better, raise your consciousness, or learn to play golf at 81 if you want to. Not me. You know.
Very good. Thank you.
You too, my man. Have a good day, Bruce.
Well, Gary, that's we're like we said, we're going to head down many paths as we go down through this show today, and it's been a lot of fun. Any more other questions? I see Susan, did you want to add something?
Yeah, basically it's like I more or less get what I want from when I ask from them. And the ones that are acting as my guides here are my crew members from my past lives into my present life. It's a soul group that goes from lifetime to lifetime to lifetime. And I wouldn't know what I know or anything without their intervention. And they're allowing me to remember my past lives and everything. And they explain to me the in utero and vitro method, and they've been with me from before I was born. And my guys are actually the ET contacts that I interact with all the time. And what Bruce said is true. They'll do the tapping noises like around the light bulbs and stuff. Sometimes they'll do the tapping noises in my room, like they're tapping on the light bulb, even though there's no light bulb there. I had a plant called Cherodopsis dentaqualis, which the common name is carpet weed, and I know my guys' names. One is Yissaron, and it reminded him of this home world, of my home world. They make clicking noises by the plant. And also when I ask, they do answer, and they come into my room and they'll make like a little noise to let me know they're there. And sometimes they create the little tiny light orbs in different colors to let me know that they're there. Sometimes I've created them by accident. And one of my guides told me not to let, because I have Asperger's syndrome. One of my guides told me not to let anybody talk down to me or chastise me or criticize me or belittle or insult me by like talking down to me like a child, because I'm not here to do that. I'm here to do a specific mission and leave. I am not here to be somebody else's self. I got to be myself. I just wanted to add that.
Thank you, Susan. Anyone else want to ask a question? Because, so Gary, I want to get into the issue of your projections, the forecasting the future of what you have seen. What do you see? So for talking about this experience that I'm in right now, I don't fear death.
Yeah,
But
good.
I've got 6 grandchildren. I've got a fantastic wife. I got tremendous friends. I'm living a great life. And I'd love everyone to have this kind of life. When I meet people, they ask me, how am I doing? I say, I'm living the dream. And I, quite frankly, I've now used that as my moniker because I am living the dream, because my dreams are my thoughts. So when I start looking at this, when you start getting these premonitions from what's going to go on in the future, what do you see? What could you add today for what you think we should be thinking and sort of working towards, other than controlling our own thoughts and manifesting our own realities as best we can? What are your thoughts on that? Because
Well,
go ahead.
I see some things sort of on a daily basis. I oftentimes see whether it's Biden or Trump or his kids, or I see oftentimes the results of a case or what's going to happen. So to some degree, but I don't dwell on it. B, the majority of what I saw happened in a millisecond in 1977 with all these pictures. And for example, I saw a picture of a Earth getting covered in oil. And about 3 years ago, I realized, oh, that was COVID. That was COVID. I saw a plane go through an airplane, an airplane go through a building. You read this in the book. When I was in Europe, I saw that actual second plane go through, and I looked around, and these same people in the blue uniforms, which I didn't know what they were then. It was just one of a million pictures. So as I see these pictures, more in the confirmation of this is still happening than for me to be able to try to predict what's going to happen or save the world or warn people. That's totally beyond my control.
Yeah.
I don't have the time and energy, the insight, the expertise, because if I had the most valid premonition tomorrow about some problem, if I talk to police or anybody, they're going to want to know, how do you know? Who's this? What? They can't go on some metaphysical concept of might, maybe, almost. So I don't worry myself about it. I know
Right.
I've seen the long-term benefits of this transformation and that we're in the middle of it, but I don't worry about it. If something kills you, you're in heaven, problem solved. Amen. And if we're still here, we're still alive, we can still grow and benefit regardless of the curveballs, regardless of the decision, the situation. And again, we do that by choice, by telling ourselves the fact that we can benefit from fear or pleasure or fun or curveballs or straight balls, or we can be complaining and wondering forever how come our guides ain't talking to us. They are. Maybe we ain't listening.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
we got the worry channel cranked up so much they can't talk over it.
Yes, exactly.
I tell people all the time, every time you feel a fear or a doubt, it's like a fire alarm. It's warning you there's a fire. So go put the fire out and then cut off the damn alarm. You don't need it anymore. That's why we feel and sense things, not to be continually terrified, but to go, oh, here's a fire, here's a problem, fix this, fix this. And if we didn't have fixed stuff to fix, especially within ourselves, we would be here. This is where we fix it at. This is where thought and intention and attitude and spirituality and soul growth all meet in the physical plane.
Wonderful.
And we're all going through it. We all will. But we were talking about reincarnation a while ago, or I think so. I mentioned this lady, met her in 1980. In the 20 years 22 years I knew her while she lived, from 1980 to I guess about 2006 or something. 40 years. She told me about, because we got to be personal friends, and I didn't pay her for readings. I helped her fix her car, and she'd do a bunch of readings for me, and because I was so curious. I asked her about the anthrax thing. Remember way back, the anthrax letters? She told me who they were, what they were, and that they were agents, and there was a special form of anthrax that they were testing out. And this is 3 days after the letters started being received. And a year later, they said, yep, it was these three mad scientists that were using this other kind of, right to a T. She was very exact, and much more than I am. But that's why I ask her to be my guide every time I do a reading, and she agrees. But she also pointed out to me probably about 25 or 30 different incarnations I've had with other people. And that's just the people I asked her about. We've had hundreds of incarnations. We really have, more than you even imagine. And because we're all a product of infinite mind seeing itself in infinite ways over infinite time. So there's infinite possibilities, and you're one, and I'm one, and here we are. So enjoy the circus.
Exactly.
Moral story.
Dean has got a question for you, Gary. Dean, unmute yourself and ask away. Dean, are you there? I'm not hearing anything. And I see you're unmuted, so. Okay.
I got it. How about now?
That's good.
Oh, sorry. I had my headphones muted. I got on this late, half an hour late, but right away, and then I wasn't able to fully concentrate. I was doing other things, but I noticed it's being recorded. I would love to have the recording.
We posted on a
listen.
YouTube page, Dean.
Oh, okay.
This will go up probably in about a week.
Can you put that in the chat for me?
Betty, can you look up the email address or the website for our for a YouTube page, and then just post it on there for him? Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, you missed some pretty good stuff, Dean.
Well, I was partly able to hear. You know how it is when you're doing other things. So
Yeah,
yeah, I was actually traveling on the roads, bicycles and stuff. So like that. Yeah.
got it. Okay. So if there's we're just over an hour, 1.5 hours so far, Gary. We've had, if there aren't any other comments, I don't mind wrapping things up at this point. And actually, maybe let's just let it go. It's been so good. So Gary, listen, I like a number of things. I want this is sort of a unique thing why the universe brings us to you. Yesterday, I didn't have a guest for the show. 6 months ago, I talked to you about being one of our guests after I started reading your book. And you said, give me a call in 6 months. Well, it's about 6 months to the day. And Gary graciously came on to our show. What made you come on to our show, Gary? Like, because you're talking about a 2-hour discussion, right? So it's a difficult thing to sort of stay with it for 2 hours. Did you ask your guides? Did you just
I
seem
kind of
right?
felt it. I've kind of felt it. You said, can I be on the show? And I kind of felt, yeah, I'm not doing anything tonight. It'd be good. I like to do interviews, not for the ego trip or to sell books, but hopefully to inspire people to use their power, to search, to grow, to evolve, to ask questions, to tap into their guides, to learn new techniques. So when I saw your offer, I went, yeah, okay, pretty simple. Pretty simple.
Well, listen, thank you. You do inspire. And thank you for coming on, because I've learned a lot and listened and enjoyed. I felt that joy coming out of you just watching tonight. And I know many people got a lot from this. Our YouTube page, I'm sure we'll get lots of plays on this. And please share it, everyone. If you get something that you like on our YouTube page, and share it with your friends, send it to them and say, hey, watch this. It's kind of interesting. Gary, thank you very much for your time. I know this is taxing, and you do a lot of this stuff to make a living as well. So we want you to make a living. We want everybody to be happy and joyous, but also the gifts that you have are obviously right in front of us, and we experienced it tonight. It'd be great for people to go and try those readings with you, and I'm going to try one myself just because I think I'm fascinated with this world, especially NDEs. Is something that I find very interesting, but there's so much more that you brought to the table tonight. And thank you very much, Gary.
Oh, it's been my pleasure, man, and thank you for the opportunity. And I hope all your readers enjoyed it, learned something, grew, and God bless you, brother.